Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to episode 184 of the Digital Queens podcast. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my word of the year. Now, this has become such a big thing on social media, and I have to say, it's a trend that I am super into. And setting a word for my year ahead is something that I've been doing for many, many years now. And I do also set, if I'm really, really honest, New Year's resolutions. Okay. And so it's not something I do instead of, it's something I do as well as. And I love having the word because it's something that I return to when things get noisy or when they get busy. Now, here's why I choose a word as well as my New Year's resolutions. A word is a compass. It points us in a direction of how do we want to feel rather than being a rule. So New Year's resolutions are often like, I am going to walk every day. I am going to do these things. And what New Year's resolutions do is they actually focus us on doing something as a habit or a ritual. And quite often what we're trying to do with resolutions is we're trying to create new habits. Now, those are fabulous if you are an inherently very motivated person. Now, I don't generally set New Year's resolutions for my business. Okay, I want to be really clear about that. I already know in my business starting the year what I want to achieve in terms of my income projection, my profitability, lots of other goals like launches, what I want to create, what's happening inside my business. I'm already very clear on those. And I'm pretty good after 15 years of being able to show up and achieve those. So I don't tend to set resolutions for my business. Now, just as a quick side note, if you would like to see my personal New Year's resolutions, I did share them on my Substack, which I'll put a link to in the podcast show notes. But my resolutions this year were also very focused on how do I want to feel. And so in my life, and one of the things I've become very aware of, and I think it's very hard not to, if you happen to look at a certain reel on social media, you will see overconsumption. People who just spend and spend and spend and buy and acquire, but not necessarily using things. And I find that very jarring. And that is counterbalanced with people who are cleaning up our oceans and our rivers and images of people in very much developing nations with absolute mountains of textile waste. Okay. And I'm not in here to nag you about all of those things, but for me, I kind of feel like, what can I do as one person to have an impact on that? Okay. And the answer is not much, but if all of us do something, then we will have an impact. And for me this year, my resolution, and I'm going to be very honest and say, it is something that is very hard and aspirational. I am going to challenge myself to buy nothing new in terms of clothes. Now, this means that I will not be purchasing online shopping. I will not be going into any clothes stores. The only exception to that is bras, knickers, and socks, okay? Because we need those new. That's fair. But I have rules around it. So I can go op shopping. I can use those buy nothing groups. I can buy secondhand on Marketplace or Depop. But I want to not buy any new clothes. And can I just say, today is the 6th of January. And I put this top on that I'm wearing today, which is super cute. And I was like, oh, it's starting to look a little bit peeled. I wonder if that top's still available in the online shop I bought it on. And I was like, I don't need this exact top. I don't need to replace it. I cleaned out my drawers last week over the Christmas break, and my t-shirt drawer, because this is kind of a t-shirt, is heaving. Okay. And this is what I'm talking about. This need to kind of have more than enough is quite hard. And so that's one of my goals or resolutions. And the other one, which again, it's the 6th of January and I'm already sucking at, is no food waste. And this is along the same lines. So I would on average, and I have 2 teenage sons, so I just want to preface that. I have 3 men in my house. On average, we would spend probably $2,000 a month on groceries, okay? Which is fine. The kids eat lots, blah, blah, blah. But what I did read is that the average household throws out 1/5 of the food that it purchases. Now, that's $400 a month, which is horrifying. But B, think about what it takes for those farmers to produce those fruit and veggies or the meat, for the transportation, for the impact on our environment, all of those things, for me to throw it in the bin. Let's not even talk about the fact that there are people starving all over the world. Okay. So that felt like something that I can do. And I want to share this with you because this morning I got up, and I often have a smoothie bowl for breakfast in the summer. And I was fossicking around in my fruit drawer in my fridge, and I was like, oh, good grief. Hidden at the back was a bunch of kiwi fruits. My son loves kiwi fruits, and they're very overripe. And I was like, oh. And in my head, can I be really honest and say, I kind of thought, well, I could throw them out because I bought them last year, and I could kind of start the challenge and say that's not okay. And I was like, no, this is the point. So 2 mushy kiwi fruits went into my smoothie bowl. Couldn't taste them, so it's okay. Sadly, I've still got 4 more in there. Good grief. I'm going to have to do something with those today. But the challenge is to not throw out food. And I've already found myself thinking about going to the store and what will I buy and how much will I buy. Because I have a family that eats a lot, I tend to buy things at Costco in quite bulk quantities. And I tend to buy my fruit and veg at Costco as well because they're in big quantities. But then as a result, I do throw things out. So I'm going to be very intentional about this. Now, if you are interested, I'm happy to give you an update every couple of months on how this is going. But I will be giving you a little bit of an update on my Substack because I kind of feel like that's a nice, fun place to share that. So those are my resolutions. I do have some other ones that I set with my kids. So my oldest son, he and I donate blood together, which is kind of a fun thing to do. And last year, coincidentally, we were booked to donate the day after the Bondi shooting, and people all over Australia donated that day, and it was super busy, and it just reminded me how important donating blood is. So my son and I set a goal that we're going to try and donate blood or plasma 10 times this year, which is completely doable and completely within the bounds of how often you're allowed to donate. But you have to commit to doing that because it is my way of giving back. I have been the recipient of blood during a surgery that I had many, many years ago. I have had a blood transfusion. And because I lived in the UK, I wasn't able to donate blood in Australia until 3 years ago. And I was really excited at the time. And then somehow it petered off and didn't become important. So I'm using my resolutions to align myself to the values that I believe I want to live by, rather than I need to lose 10 kilos and I need to go to the gym 3 times a week and boring stuff like that. I've really focused in on how do I want to feel about myself and my life and what I am contributing to the world and to sustainability and to the planet. So that's a little bit about me. But what this does do in a circuitous way is take us back to the word of the year, because with resolutions, so often they're about, these are my goals, these are what I want to achieve. They're often embedded in numbers and tangible outcomes and results. And so what we really want to do and why we often fail is it's really hard. It's really hard to find the motivation to go, I want to walk every day. I want to do 10,000 steps every day. The only way you can do that is to find a reason to do that. So I didn't have any of those because last year my husband and I made a really big commitment that we would walk every morning and it would be part of our routine. And it's really, I know this sounds weird. We work together and we share an office at home. We don't speak to each other enough. And so one of the things that I want to do this year is spend more time connected with my husband as our baby adults head out into the world. And so I know that walking is really important because it's great for my health. It's great for our mental health. Great to connect with my husband, and it's really great to step away from the tech world. Okay, that's what is motivating me behind why do I need to walk every day. So the words that we choose for the year are often about how do we want to feel. And so I should do a little drum roll. My word of the year is connection. So 2026 is all about connection. Okay, now remember that a word should come from how do I want to feel, and to kind of become that true north so that when I'm feeling discombobulated and I don't know what I'm doing or I'm overwhelmed, I look back and go, right, this year was about connection, Sarah. How do you want to feel? I want to feel connected to other people. And so funnily enough, my New Year's resolution is about connecting myself to the planet, connecting myself to the global community, and connecting myself as a responsible member of human race. Okay, that's what it's about. It's about that connection. But for me in my business, the word connection means being connected to all of my offers, being connected to the women that I work with, and being connected to a community of entrepreneurs. Okay. Now, I've been in business, as I said, this year will be 15 years in business for me. And I could say without a doubt, one of the hardest things about running a business is not having a group of people who also run a business. I have some amazing friends that don't run businesses, that are wonderful, supportive cheerleaders for me, but they often don't understand the nuances that come with running a business. They don't often understand the continuous pressure that we feel to show up, to perform, to create, to hit goals. Those things are really hard, and having a community is key to that. So with that in mind, I chose that word because that feels really important for me. Last year, one of the things that I noticed was that I felt business was easy and in flow when I was surrounded by like-minded business women. And that looked different. So I belong in Perth to a really good women's networking group that I attend things once or twice a month. So that gives me the opportunity to have really great conversations, to expand my network. I'm often meeting women who are new in business and talking about their journey, and it reminds me how far I've come. So I do a pretty good job with that. In my mastermind this year, I took the very brave step, which felt very uncomfortable because my mastermind is purely online and I have women from around the world that belong to it. This year, I decided that I would create a tier of my mastermind. So my mastermind has two tiers. One's called the Crown and one's called the Crown Jewels. In the Crown Jewels, you can attend one event a month here in Perth. Now, I was so scared about doing this because I didn't want to upset all of the other members that weren't based in Perth. But what I've done is I've created two separate tiers so that it works really, really well. So every month we are going to be doing an event IRL in real life where we touch and feel other human beings and we have conversations. Now, each month is something different. We're kicking off by going to, at the end of January, we're going to Rottnest, which if you don't know Perth and Western Australia, it's our own island resort, but it's a very casual island. There are no cars. It's very low key and laid back. And I felt like I love it as a space. The traditional Noongar name for it is Wodjumup, and it is a beautiful space that I think has something very special about it that will allow us to pause, to slow down, and to connect with each other. So the purpose of that first event is to, well, it's an introduction to meet the other members of the mastermind, but it's to connect and to pause. Throughout this year, I've got some B-roll days, I've got co-working, I've got networking lunches, and I've also got a staycation. So the word connection is already showing up in my business, and it feels really, really important to do that. The other thing that I want to do is make sure I keep attending and making space for those networking events. So as I said, I belong to a big one in the city, and I also belong to one called Secret Women's Collab, which is south of the river. So shout out to my friend Ash, who runs that networking group. She is doing an amazing job of creating beautiful events that are local to where we live south of the river in Perth. Now, I asked Ash last year, and I know that I'm a pain. I said to her, is there any chance you could give me the dates for the events, even if it's just to save the date, because my mastermind and my membership have the whole calendar year laid out. And I try as far as possible not to move things, but I really want to honor my need for connection by being able to attend your events. So I have got those in my diary and locked and loaded. So I'm very committed to going to events, to being present with other women. And on top of that, if that all doesn't sound like enough, I'm also, there's probably 3 or 4 women that live very local to me that, like me, want to get out the house and do things. And we go to our local library, which has beautiful rooms that you can use for free. And we hang out and we co-work and we gossip and we get work done. And it is really, really good. I get so much from that. So shout out to my girls, Nina, Emily, and Ash, who I co-work with regularly, because I get a lot from those. I get a lot from that connection. And again, I want that to be an important part of me for this year. So that is a little bit about my word for the year. And if you are sitting there and you haven't created a word for yourself, I want you to have a little fun play with ChatGPT. So I don't want this to all be like the Sarah show. That's the Digital Queens show. I want to invite you to do something that you may not have done before. So if you are currently not using the ChatGPT app, I would invite you to download that onto your phone. Now, what is great about the app, and you can do it on the desktop, but it's just easier on your phone, is you can have a conversation with the app, with ChatGPT, and you can say to it, I want to do this, let's bounce this, or let's brainstorm this. And I want you to talk to it and say to it, last year I struggled with because I felt like I was at home too much and I felt isolated and I felt disconnected. And this year I want it to be different. I want to feel connected. I want to feel like this. So give it some words on what didn't work last year. What did you feel was missing? Kind of brainstorm those ideas with it and say to it, I need a word that becomes my anchor, my true north, so that when things get busy or noisy or I feel overwhelmed and I just think, which way am I spinning? I look at that word and I'm like, right, this year was about connection. How am I honoring and showing up for that feeling? And I think that's really, really important. So if this is something you haven't tried before, I would really encourage you to do it. I absolutely love ChatGPT for brainstorming. I love it to brainstorm in a conversation style, which means that I'm not writing, I am speaking, and it speaks back to me. Remember, as human beings, we have been having verbal conversations for thousands of years. It is our natural style of communication. It is only probably the last, I think, is it 3,000 or 4,000 years that we have had written form, and probably only the last few hundred years since the invention of the printing press that we have had the written word being mass produced. And so it is not our brain's natural wiring to type and write things. It is our brain's natural wiring to speak. So if you have the opportunity to try out ChatGPT, use the speaker function on it. As I said, you can definitely do it on the desktop or your laptop, as long as you've got a microphone. Personally, I love doing it on my phone because we speak into our phone. It feels very natural. And asking it to have that conversation back and forward with you is going to allow you to find that word that is going to see you through 2026. So remember I was saying, how does this support my word for the year? So if I'm doing something and like, how does this support my word, which is connection? Does that feel aligned? Does that feel right? Because this is my true north. This is where I'm heading. And 2026 is all about connection. So a word like of the year gives you permission to focus on what really matters, especially when life and business pulls us in a million different directions and you don't know which way is up and you don't know where to go. So it is great to set a word at the start of the year. And like, as I said, today is the 6th of January. This episode's not coming out for a couple of weeks, but it's still January. And setting a word at the beginning of the year matters because the new year has so much fresh energy. And I feel like this energy, particularly here in Australia, carries all the way through to February, which is when our children go back to school. Many of us are still on summer holidays. We're still enjoying that break. And it's all got that fresh new energy. But the beginning of the year also carries that natural pause and that reset energy, which I really, really love. It is a beautiful time to reflect on what we want more of this year and what do we want less of. So this is not about fixing ourselves or fixing what's wrong in our business, but it comes from this intention and care of like, how do I want to feel? So it's consciously choosing the shape of your year ahead. So here's what I want you to ask yourself. How do you want to live this year? And not just what do you want to build? Okay, that's the key difference of your word of the year. So as I said, my word for this year is for 2026 is connection. All right. Connection to myself, to my values, to my intuition, connection with the women I support and the community around me. Connection that feels real, deep, and human is really what I am looking for. So after seasons of growth, systems, and scaling, I definitely felt called back to connection. And it felt like when it landed, I was like, that's it. That's the right word for me. And it's not instead of success. It goes alongside it because I want to build my business in a way that feels really aligned for me. And as you all know, I am a social butterfly and connection is at the heart of what I do. So here's what I want you to think about when you are choosing your word. And I want to talk about why I chose connection. Um, for me, as I said, as an alpha extrovert, I feel most fulfilled when things that I do are rooted in connection, real conversations, honest support, shared experiences. I do not want to have a business that feels distant or transactional. I want one that feels relational, warm, and alive. So, connection is what makes me feel grounded when things are busy and fast. And above all, it reminds me why I do this work in the first place. So, I shared a bit about how I'm bringing things to life in 2026, but here's what it looks like inside my business, because I've given you the practical things of how my crown jewels has got a Perth component, how I belong to networking groups. But I am going to intentionally create more spaces for conversation and community in my everyday. I want to intentionally deepen the experiences inside both my mastermind and my membership. I want to design offers that feel like they encourage interaction rather than just consumption. And I want to create more opportunities to be seen, heard, and supported. That's what's really, really important for me this year. So, what that also looks like on the flip side of that is protecting my own connection to myself through boundaries and slower decision making. I'll give you a hint, that is not my natural style. And I want to include in that connection word, choosing aligned collaborations and saying no more often, because that is still a work in progress. My boundaries and the ability to say no are always a work in progress. So I guess as a closing to today's podcast, I want you to use AI and brainstorm to come up with that word for the year. Not what sounds impressive, but what feels nourishing. So something that supports the life and business that you want to create. And let your word guide you back to yourself throughout the year. So I want to wrap up by saying 2026 for me is not about doing more. It is about being more present, more connected, and more intentional. And I cannot wait to walk alongside you in this journey and this kind of this time of life and business that I am in right now. So hope you've enjoyed today's podcast episode. If you have come up with a word, head over to Insta, jump into my DMs and say, Sarah, this is my word for 2026. I want to be there to cheer you on, to remind you to come back to that word. One of my goals for this week, and I'm hoping by the time this podcast goes live, is I am going to create, I'm actually going to use Canva because they have some beautiful tools in there to create the word connection inside a beautiful image that I might color in. I'm not great at that, but it's okay. And I want to have it on my wall so that I'm looking at it every single day to remind me this is my true north. This is how I want to feel. So over to you to create your word, to find that true north for yourself and your business in 2026, and wishing you lots of fun and as you create that. So as always, thank you for tuning in to me. I'm looking forward to catching you the same time next week on Digital Queens.